Experience Waterloo. This is Tim Harwood. Each winter I travel with the Blackhawks to cities all over the Midwest. But there's nothing that compares to coming home. Let me invite you to experience Waterloo's vibrant downtown district with award-winning museums and locally owned restaurants, and enjoy exciting events all year long. Create your experience with places to stay, foods to savor, and things to see at experiencewaterloo.com.
I guess just tell me a little bit about what you do for Blackhawk County.
Well, basically, I work for Blackhawk County, and it's the WasteTrac Education Team, and it's a partnership between Blackhawk County Conservation and Blackhawk County Solid Waste Management Commission. So there's two of us that do education. For the most part, what I do is based on making sure like our garbage is getting smaller and less toxic.
Okay. And how did you get started kind of in this business?
Sure. I guess since I was a little kid, I always cared about animals and nature and the environment. When I was really little, I wanted to be a zookeeper, like most kids. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll work with, parks or be a science teacher. And so eventually I pared it down and then went to UNI and got a biology degree. And then I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I actually got a job at a residential camp on Long Island, and it was where kids from New York City would come out to Long Island. They would do a day or a 2-day field trip, and they would learn about nature and kind of be away from the concrete and the dirty city, and then they'd be able to come out to nature and learn about the seashore and forestry. And so that was kind of fun. So that kind of got me into environmental education. So then when I came back to Iowa, I looked at county conservation, and then I got my first job with Bremer County Conservation, and I was there for 9 years, and then I've been with Blackhawk County 11 years, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess people who have listened to a few episodes of this podcast now know that I'm very interested to see like how people ended up where they ended up. Because I think it's interesting that it was, a love of animals and a love of, or the desire to work in a zoo or something like that is how you ended up making your way here.
Sure.
So we're here to kind of celebrate Earth Day a little early. But I wanted to kind of bring you on so that we could talk about, as you've touched on, like waste management and recycling within our own like small ecosystem. I kind of wanted to start by talking about recycling. And for me, a lot of times it just seems very overwhelming. It seems like a lot, but it also seems really important. So I really want to just touch on how to make it manageable, different ways people can do that, and then like why it's important as well.
Sure.
So I guess, kind of starting with recycling from the very beginning, what's, some basic rules of thumb?
Sure. Basic is just finding out what your city accepts and follow that to the T. I think in the past people were like, plastic is plastic, I'm just going to throw it in there and somebody else can deal with it. Well, that might have been good intentions, but what it was is that it was contaminating our plastics, and a lot of the plastics were going over to China. And then they sort of had some regulations themselves, and so they kind of basically shut the door on a lot of like American recyclables because our stuff was too messy. So the message really needs to go from recycling entities or cities and counties to say, if you're going to recycle, you need to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So if your city says we're only taking like these materials, that you're following that to the T. And a lot of times they don't understand too of like, sometimes when we say like, oh, when you have a plastic bag, yes, that is recyclable, but not in your cart. And the reason is when it goes in the cart, it's all commingled with all the other stuff, goes in your cart, but then eventually goes in a recycling truck, goes to a facility, and they put it on conveyor belts. And you think about like a plastic bag, how that's going to get tangled up in all the machinery. So sometimes there's different reasons. So it's not like we don't want people to recycle their plastic bags. It's just that when you put it in your curbside cart, eventually it's going to maybe, cause a lot of damage. Or when they say we don't want glass in your curbside cart, it's because workers are still, we might think like, oh, it's all automated now and machines are doing everything. Well, no, there's still a lot of people who are handling it, and for their safety, we want to make sure that people aren't putting the glass there. Now, like the city has 4 recycling roll-off bins, so you may have seen like the big bins that are outside, like Crossroads Mall, over by Fire Station 1, or there's a couple other locations. There's a special receptacle that's for the clear glass, and that's where the glass can go. So you still can recycle the glass, but that's where people need to know like the ins and outs of like how recycling works in their city. And just like if you let's say that you move to a different county, their recycling could be completely different. So a lot of times it just depends on the end markets that those cities have. So I know even between Waterloo and Cedar Falls, how they do glass is different because Cedar Falls is working with a different company. Okay. And the company is making brown beer bottles. So they take both clear and colored glass because ultimately it's not going to be made into a window. It's going to be made into a beer bottle. So they can mix the brown and the blue and the green and the clear glass all together. Whereas Waterloo, if they're working with a company that then is going to be making clear glass, they want just clear bottles. So like just your spaghetti sauce jars and your jelly jars, not all like the oddball colors of glass. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of just specifics about recycling, and I know it's not standard from city to city or even across the whole state of Iowa. Or if you go to different, if you're not in the Midwest and you go to the coast, like they may only accept maybe plastic 1 and 2. And then when I say that, like, I don't know if people are familiar with the recycling symbol. Okay. So it's just like the little triangle that has the 3 arrows that look like they're chasing each other. So on the bottom of like bottled water, there's going to be a number 1, whereas like a milk jug's going to have a number 2 on the bottom. So when we say like, oh, only put in there the numbers of plastic that your city accepts, like that's the kind of stuff, like either on the side of the bottle or on the bottom of the bottle. That's the kind of stuff that people need to look for. And like a cap, if it doesn't have a recycling symbol and it doesn't even have the number, why, if I'm recycling that at a facility and I'm melting it all down, why do I want mystery plastics messing up my $1,000 machines? So that's where wish cycling, like people say, I wish it could be recycled, I'm just going to put it in there, and if they don't want it, they can take it out. I'm like, no, sorry. We need to do more of the work and make sure that I know exactly what my city accepts. I only put those materials in there, and that's going to be better for recycling in the long run.
Yeah, because I think that people, I definitely understand, like, wanting it to be recyclable, not wanting to waste it, but I think we've seen that it does a lot more harm than good.
Yeah, and I think that's where people, like, too, have to realize, too, like, oh, they're the ones that are purchasing those things, whether, they're packaged in different materials, and if it's not packaged in a good material that's recyclable, then maybe say, maybe I don't want to purchase that next time, or I'm going to look for more alternatives, or I'm going to maybe go to a grocery or a retail store where they're going to let me maybe, bring my own containers, or go to like bulk food places, and then try to eliminate more of that single-use packaging.
Yeah, and it can be really like overwhelming, especially like I've moved here from North Carolina, a very different place, to an extent, but it's like a completely different world, and figuring out all those rules is hard. Is there like a website that lists all the or a place that lists all the rules for different cities, like that you can usually find? Where are those usually posted?
Yeah, well, I know on our county website, so it's WasteTrac, so TRAC.org, we have a whole page that just says city links. And so like, let's say like if you live in Waterloo, or you live in Cedar Falls, you live in Hudson, whatever, you would click on that, and that goes directly to the city's page. So it's up to each city then to like update, maintain their website so it has accurate information. So I know for Waterloo, people would look for like sanitation within Public Works, and then they would look for, are they going to go to a recycling roll-off, or do they participate in the voluntary recycling program? So they would kind of have to kind of figure out like, oh, do they have a cart or do they have the roll-off? And then, because it's slightly different even between those two.
Okay.
So each city should have like a list, because it's up to them. It's up to each like city council, public works departments to work together. So like for me as a county entity, we don't dictate, or the landfill doesn't dictate what each city accepts. It's up to each city to kind of customize their program for whatever they want to accept.
Okay. So we'll link to that website then in the description of the podcast.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So that people can find it and kind of check whether you live in Cedar Falls or Waterloo, what those cities accept if you have any questions, because I know I probably have a million. So then I just kind of wanted to, we've talked about kind of the importance of it, and what are, I guess like a few key things, people can start doing. I know that you have pickup that you can do, and you can throw your basic stuff in the recycling bin. But I guess what's the next step, I think is my question.
Well, I think is if they have the materials, they've looked at what their cities accepts, make sure if they have like jars and cans that they're cleaned out, that's same thing with the plastic, if you have like yogurt cups or whatever, that is, reasonably clean. Some of the stuff, if you're using the roll-off boxes, it does help to smash it down, because then more material can go in those blue boxes before then a truck has to come, and so there's a lot of transportation costs involved with recycling. So people can smash down their boxes and then even smash their cans, whatever. Curbside, maybe it's not as vital, but if you want, like if your family creates a lot of recyclables, you might want to smash your milk jugs, and so then like if it's only every 2 weeks, you might say like, ooh, we need to smash our stuff so it can fit in there a little bit better. So I'd say like making sure it's clean, making sure you know what your recycling day is. I know through sanitation they want people to put it out the night before or by 6 a.m. on the morning, so to make sure that people get it out on time, because they're not going to make a special trip just for one person or this other person that they didn't get up early enough to get their cart out.
Yeah.
And I know as far as the carts go, they want to make sure that the cart is not next to other things and it's not really close to a car or a sign or whatever. So there's a certain way that you want to place your cart. You want to make sure that there's usually arrows on the cart. You want to make sure that it's facing the street, so they can just kind of come with that robotic arm and like pick it right up. So you don't want it sideways or backwards.
Yeah.
So that helps them, do it a little more speedy if it's set up the right way.
Little things make a difference.
Right. Yeah.
I've learned things are made to, do certain things, and so, if we can make it as easy as possible, then more stuff can get recycled. So I guess what I'm wondering now is, we have these products that are recycled or made from recycled products. So where how do we get our stuff? I know you were talking about Cedar Falls sells to one company, Waterloo sells to another company. Kind of, how does that gap get bridged? Because I think that's, we recycle, sure, but if we don't do anything with it, then it's still, just sitting there as if it were in a landfill.
Yep. So basically, once you recycle stuff and it's good material, they're going to bale it. And a lot of times, then they'll get it to a mill, or they'll get it to where they're making aluminum or steel again, or they'll get it to a plastics recycling place, and then they'll turn it into a new product. So when I visit schools and we talk to kids about this, and we talk about, when you recycle paper, what are you really rescuing? And a lot of times, depending on how old they are, they don't even know that paper comes from trees. So we'd start with some of those basics. But as you get older, a lot of people don't know, okay, where does aluminum come from? Where does, the steel for my soup can come from? So then when we talk to kids, we talk about bauxite ores, what they turn into aluminum, and iron ores, what they turn into the steel. So just some of those basics to say, okay, now if I can take an old can and turn it into a new can, or take an old can, mix it with a whole bunch of other ones, and I have recycled steel content in a new car or something. That's a lot less ore that I had to go into the ground and mine for. There's going to be a lot less pollution, mining waste. There's going to be a lot less energy that had to be produced. So there's a lot of water conservation. There's a lot of energy conservation, hauling, transportation costs and stuff. So if you can just kind of keep all our recyclables, within even the Midwest or whatever. So it's just a better use. and there's more conservation of resources. So I think sometimes people say, like, what's it matter if I just put it in the recycling bin versus put it in the landfill? Well, when it goes to the landfill, like, there's no sorting. It just goes into the cell, basically the hole in the ground, never to be used again. So, I mean, it's 177,000 tons of material that goes to our landfill every year. And a lot of times people, too, don't realize that our landfill is no longer just the Blackhawk County landfill. We are getting materials from Bremer County. We're getting materials from Fayette County and portions of 2 other counties. So it's basically become a regional landfill. So it's really important for people to, like, if it is valuable, which I feel cardboard's valuable, paper's valuable, plastics, the metals, if it's valuable, it does not really belong in the garbage. Like, why are we spending good money to bury this stuff when we could put it in the recycling bin? And then I did bring a few props today. Like, we have a little toy that's made out of milk jugs, and then we've got a teddy bear that's made out of bottled water, so it's made out of plastic #1. You can find all kinds of paper products, so you can look for 100% recycled content paper towels, or you can look for toilet paper that has a certain content. I know our county parks, that's what we put in our campgrounds, is a high recycled content toilet paper. Maybe a little bit rough, but it's good for the environment. And then there's a whole bunch of other just materials too that are out there. So there's different, like, glass things. I know we've had different sun catchers that we've found that were made out of recycled glass. Metal, a lot of times this goes back into, like, more metal, so then there's products that have a recycled metal content in them. But yeah, there's a lot of products that you can look out there. So if you just we're doing like a Google search and you just said, I want to look for recycled content products, there's going to be tons that come up. So maybe you might not find them at your, like, local retail store, but I imagine online you could find a lot of different cool products. I know, like, the Green Toys company, like, there's a couple of, like, different stores around here that have carried. I know, like, University Book and Supply in the years past used to carry that. So, but also too, I think people need to hear from us to say, like, hey, why don't you carry more recycled content products? Or I'm looking for more eco-friendly, books or toys or whatever it is. Or I want to put a new deck on my house instead of just having it be, like, virgin plastic. Maybe you could say, like, I want to look for the decking or the picnic table that's made out of old milk jugs. So I know we found different bird feeders that are like that as well. So sometimes it's just searching out those, and they're really easy to find. And then with shipping now, you can just have it delivered to your house.
I hadn't ever really considered, like, everything, I guess, that went into recycling. So, like, the fact that you have to transport it here and then transport it there, and then making sure, I guess, just keeping that in mind too when you buy recycled stuff, that it's, if you can find it locally or if you can advocate for it locally, that would be really good. And that's one other thing that I do miss. There was a grocery store that I went to in Greensboro that had like a lot of their stuff you could, like, put your own or bring your own container and fill it up, and I haven't found that as much here, which would be really nice.
And I think more of us just need to, like, go into those stores and say, like, hey, I'm really looking to go more low waste. Like, would your store consider that? So I think sometimes they just need to hear from us that that's where we want them to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of, like, consumer demand. So I guess, sorry, I lost my mouse. The other thing that I hear a lot about in regards to recycling is about, like, composting and food waste and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, because I think that it's another big thing that falls under recycling. And so kind of I want to talk about food waste, especially here. So what kind of, I guess, what that looks like and how people can fight food waste.
Right. Yeah, and it actually is a pretty big issue. And And our solid waste agency it's looking to do more backyard composting classes. And actually, like one of our most popular programs that we offer to the schools through our outreach program is the vermicomposting. So it's composting with little red worms. So I'd say that's probably one of our more popular ones. And then I'm probably a year and a half out from doing 1,000 programs about the composting worms. So it's really popular. We even have about 12 schools where they actually have the little worm bins in their classrooms, and then I take them back for the summer and babysit them, and then they go back to school, in September for another group of kids. So that's kind of a fun way just to kind of address how much food waste. So, and a lot of people don't even know that the Iowa DNR does research on garbage. So they actually, it's every, I don't know, like 6 to 8 years. The last time they did some research was in 2017, and they have this study, so anybody can look it up. It's called the Iowa Waste Characterization Study. So basically they hired a company, and then so it's like this engineering firm, and they go to different landfills and also different transfer stations across the state, and they kind of get an Iowa average of like what's in our garbage. And they found out that paper, cardboard, kind of like that fiber category, was still 25.5%. Number 2 was food waste at 20%. So even if people just like, after they hear this podcast and they're like, I want to do something, for our community and kind of go green, even if they just recycle their paper and the cardboard and start a compost bin, they can knock out over 45% of what we're sending to our local landfills.
That's crazy.
So we could say like, oh, these garbage trucks, like they're not gonna be so full anymore if we can at least knock those. And then plastic, of course, was like number 3, like 18%. But as far as food waste goes, I know there's different programs across the state. I know UNI is really big in kind of tackling food waste. So they have a lot of resources on their website as well. But like the food waste, it's kind of a crazy category, but there's so much that we can do. So I know like they're working with trying to figure out like, okay, if it's still usable food, we need to get food to people in need. So that's like the first thing of like, we want to make sure that if it's good food, it's used by humans. After that, then it's like some states allow you to use it for like livestock. Iowa's a little more strict about that. But then also, it doesn't make sense to take all this food waste and then just throw it into a landfill. It'd be nice if there was more composting that went on. So there's not a whole lot of companies around here that do large-scale composting. So unfortunately, like if people want to compost, they kind of need to do it like, with pet worms indoors if they just have like a small house or an apartment, or if they have a yard and they can start a backyard compost bin. That's a great way to kind of tackle that food waste issue. Because I think about like, I first started with just recycling, and then when I got my first house, that's when I started doing backyard composting, and that was probably 21 years ago. And I got my first compost bin. My mom had gone to a master gardener class, and she came home and she had like this kind of plastic, kind of Darth Vader looking plastic bin, and so that's what I've used for composting like ever since then. So it's lasted me all these years. So I know a lot of people like they might have more leaves or more content, so they might want to like build like a 3-bin one out of like the old pallets. So I mean there's all kinds of different styles of compost bins out there. And I know like our friends at UNI with the Green Iowa AmeriCorps group, they're actually going to be doing a sale of compost bins. So if people are like, I don't know if I really want to, go and build my own, I'll just get this, $50, $60 one and then try it out and stuff. So I know that's kind of a neat thing that we're kind of looking forward to. But just think about all like the watermelon rinds and the banana peels and the lettuce that goes bad in the back of the fridge, and then you can balance that with like your fast food napkins and your fast food bag and sawdust and leaves and that kind of stuff. So we do workshops occasionally that kind of teach people about like the greens and the browns and kind of balancing the carbon and the nitrogen, and then getting like a good recipe for your compost bin. But I always tell people, even if you just do like the simplest kind of stuff, and you just like, if it's organic and you just plop it in that pile, and then if you remember to stir it once a week, that's awesome. But if you don't, it's still awesome because it's not going into the landfill. It's not going in those garbage trucks. But for me, like I make a really beautiful compost every spring. So before I plant my garden, I scoop it out, and I've got this little screen that my dad rigged up for me, and so then like it all goes through the screen, and it's beautiful, and it ends up in the bottom of the wheelbarrow, and then I just use it, and then I usually have enough to share, with neighbors or friends. So for me, it's kind of nice because it's like, okay, I had those fruits and vegetables, and then I put the peels in the compost, and then I made compost, and then it goes in the garden, and then I raise more vegetables. So it's this very small little circle, and then there's not much footprint to that versus, throwing it away. And
well, and I feel like we have, like, looking, because whenever I sit down to think about recycling or talk about recycling, I end up just getting overwhelmed because a lot of times it's looked at on just this global level. And I'm like, I'm not,
right.
Doing anything. So breaking it down to the city level and just seeing, like, those numbers, and those seem like much more feasible numbers to really do something about. So it's really interesting to hear that, like, even if you just picked either recycling or composting to start with, I think that's 20% of the city's waste, and we aren't in a huge city, so each person's, trash really does make a difference. That kind of really sticks with me, and I like the bringing it back to a local level kind of.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see, like, all the different facets of recycling, because I know, at least from my perspective, you say, oh yeah, recycling just covers everything. But when you really kind of start digging deep, there's a lot there, and a lot for, like, the city to manage.
And a lot of times they say too, like, we need to look at reducing our garbage, and then reusing, and then recycling. And then when most people in, like, the waste industry, like, there's a hierarchy, and actually they want you to really concentrate on reducing and reusing, and then recycling's last. But as an average person, maybe, like, recycling might be manageable. Like, me and my kids can do that, and we can kind of help out. But then they also say too, like, to say maybe reducing and reusing are even more important, to say, like, we need to really think about all the purchases that we make, all the things we bring into our home or our businesses, and then looking for if they're still good products, then we need to get them to somebody who can use them. So that's why when I talk to, like, little kids, we talk about garage sales and finding, like, a little cousin that can use, like, your clothes, your shoes, your toys, your books, or even, like, for different businesses to, like, take advantage and look at some of the programs that different thrift shops have, and then also, like, restore. So if you have, like, your office is getting rid of, like, all this perfectly good furniture, but you're just updating everything, maybe give them a call and say, like, hey, like, we've got all this, furniture, cubicles, chairs, whatever it is, and then maybe just trying to find somebody who maybe could, like, that would fit their budget. Like, they could go to restore, get a chair for $5, and we're keeping it out of the landfill. So there's a lot of, really good programs like that are really focusing on reusing.
Yeah, I know. I love, like, thrift stores and stuff like that. And one other thing that this made me think of that I actually did when I moved, we had, like, furniture and stuff we were getting rid of. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to either throw it away or someone's going to come get it. So I posted it on, like, the Facebook Market and Craigslist for $0. I was like, I can sit here for 3 days. Like, I set a time limit, and most of the pieces were picked up.
That's great. Yeah.
So that's just another, if you don't want to move it, I know I've used the Facebook Market to get rid of large pieces of furniture. So if that's something that you're interested in doing as well, I think that that's a good way to try to move pieces somewhere else instead of tossing them. Because I don't know if I've really thought through, like, everything that I do throw away. But it's a lot, especially considering it's just 2 people that live in my home.
Right.
It surprises me how often we take out the trash.
Yeah. And even when I've had, like, garage sales, I'll have a whole table that's just, like, free stuff. Like, I don't even want anything for it, but if someone could find a use for it, then I'm just going to, put it out there. And yeah, it's amazing, how little you have left at the end of the garage sale then.
Yeah, because if you're just going to stick it in the trash, then
I'd rather somebody, get some value out of it.
Yeah, it takes a little extra work if that's something that's viable. Is there anything else that you wanted to share today?
Well, I guess if people wanted to learn more about how they can make their, garbage smaller or less toxic, they can always, give us a call. And or if they want to schedule a landfill tour, we also do that. So we'll do it as young as kindergarten or first grade. Every year we have LaPorte City first graders that come out to the landfill, and I have a group of teachers. They've been doing it for 10 years in a row now, so it's kind of neat for them to see, like, oh, that used to be a hole in the ground and now it is full, and now we've moved on to the next cell. So or if groups can't come out to the landfill and do a tour, we can definitely go to them. We've got like all kinds of cool, slides and pictures that show them like how they construct a cell at the landfill, or a little bit about that waste characterization study, to say like, what are we as Iowans throwing in our garbage, and then how could we do a better job of it. So yeah, we're happy to kind of visit any group in Blackhawk County. So if they're like a early morning Kiwanis club, or if they're like a Lions group, or like a mom's group, or a 4-H club, or whoever it is, like I said, we start at age 4 and we'll go up to senior citizens, and we've gone to some of like the Western home groups and talk to them. So yeah. We want to just get out there and reach as many people as we can and say, like, let's work on getting this garbage a little bit smaller and less toxic.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of groups, the one other thing that I wanted you to talk about was you were saying that groups can rent or check out trash bins for events.
Yeah, we've got recycling bins. Yeah. So if anybody's been to either Live to 9 or the Iowa Irish Fest, or there's a couple other big events that have borrowed our equipment. So basically it's like fold up recycling equipment, so it's easy to transport. And then when you get to the event, you kind of like fold it out, you put a bag in it. There's a lid on the top that says like what we're supposed to put in there. So for us, we kind of limited it to the 5-cent deposit container. So if like there's an event and they're selling beer or pop or whatever, anything that has a 5-cent deposit, they can go in there, and then that helps the event. When they go to clean up, they can say, oh, we're going to take this bag right here right to the redemption center. And then there's separate ones, and they're color coded, so they have like a blue lid, and it says like this would be for like bottled water, Gatorade, like that kind of stuff. So there would be like the plastic bottles that don't have a deposit. So yeah, we actually bought more equipment a year and a half ago, because Irish Fest was getting bigger and bigger. So we wanted to have enough equipment for them. So we provide the equipment. We don't charge anything for it. People just kind of like rent it, and then we provide the bags for them, and then the only thing we do is just ask for a small deposit, so that way we make sure like we get our equipment back. So people just would come to our office in Cedar Falls and check it out, and then bring it back to us after they have their event. So we're just trying to make recycling events a little bit easier. So we have all this equipment, it's in our storage unit. We want it to be out in the community and be used, because I don't want it just to sit in my storage shed. I want it to be out in the community and have people use it.
Well, and it can be, for events, you mentioned really large events, but for events large, small, if it's just like a church gathering.
Like a 5K run. If there's, we've had different churches that do like a supper or a pancake breakfast. We've had weddings borrow it before. So there's a large variety of different groups that could possibly. If you're selling something that comes in a bottle or a can, you probably want our stuff.
No, I just think that that's a really neat thing that the county offers that I think people should be aware of. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thanks for letting me come and talk about recycling today.
Of course, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.